So we are living in a world far more complex than at any other time in our 300,000 year human journey. And it is changing at least what feels like to me an ever accelerating pace. It's almost as if you can't even catch your breath, and some new technology, some new complexity in how we are being together in this human journey sends us off into another space of confusion and uncertainty. For most of human history, survival depended upon belonging. Tribes and kinship systems emerged because we discovered that cooperation with each other increased our chances of survival. And as populations grew and competitions for resources intensified, we saw the rise of personal power and achievement become increasingly important in our human development. And later, after centuries of conflict and upheaval, societies sought greater order, stability, through laws, through moral codes, through religions forming, through this idea of duty and our place within this great realm of defined beingness. That took us through the first almost 280,000 years of our development. And it's only been in these last 1,800 years, which is like a blink in the big scheme of things, for things to really begin to accelerate and move at a pace unlike any other time in history. Beginning around the scientific revelation, humanity's worldview shifted dramatically. People increasingly look to reason, to individual achievement, to personal enlightenment as the way to greater unfoldment and evolution. And in the last few centuries, sort of as an antidote to the unchecked aspect of that, especially since the 1960s, another shift has emerged within our culture, a growing, at least this is in the United States. I'm going to speak mostly to the United States, although different parts of the world may have different places where they are in their own worldviews. But what has emerged now is a growing awareness of diversity and inclusion and the environment and responsibility and the importance of every voice being heard, probably never before in this same way in our human development. And this ongoing evolution is described in the best way I've been able to find that helps us understand this as spiral dynamics. And many of you, if you've been around here for a while, I've done different series on spiral dynamics. So we're not doing a deep dive into it. I'm gonna, if it's something that you want to explore further, then you're certainly welcome to. But as you see this image, it's a model of how we have evolved, but it's not just how we've evolved culturally or in societies, but it also reflects how we've evolved, and we each are required to evolve individually. So our human development mirrors these stages. We begin life completely dependent on others as a baby. We learn belonging through family and community, and it might be radically different depending on the environment that we grow up in. But we eventually discover our own autonomy and personal power, which is the red level there. Don't worry about the colors, just are there to represent certain aspects of this. If we are able to integrate in a greater way to society, then we have to learn responsibility. We have to learn the rules. We have to understand what the social expectations are in the culture that we are growing up in. As adults, at least in this Western world, our focus is often on achievement and on success, and that's what we're, encouraged to do as young adults, is to go find and take our place in the world. And as it often happens, there comes a time beyond just this idea of I've succeeded and achieved certain things, that we go back to sort of that deeper meaning seeking, that idea that there is something that's beautiful to be found in the midst of relationships, of family, of having children, as wonderful and frustrating as it could be. There's something about that calls us greater into our own adulthood and the way in which that unfolds in our life. So this model of spiral dynamics can help us understand where we are both as individuals and where we are collectively as a culture. And you can slice it in just about any way you want to look at it. But it's important, really important, I want you to hear this as clearly as you can, that each stage emerges not because the other one was wrong or bad or not sufficient, but it emerges because the previous stage can no longer adequately respond to the complexity of life that is emerging. Each one emerges to become a greater container for complexity, not for better or for worse, but is able to manage a much more complex ecology of humanity, if you will, especially the way the world is so interconnected right now. Gary Simmons writes this in his Integral Ministry Practice book, which is part of what I've been studying and working with within this community. He says, each stage is necessary for our healthy development and cannot be skipped. So it's not about, I'm too evolved to, we go through each one of these as part of our own development, and none of them are bad or wrong, better or worse. Just as an adolescent is not better than a toddler, they are just at a different stage in their own development. They have, as they grow, a greater and greater capacity to handle more complexity. And these worldviews also shape and have shaped our churches, our spiritual communities, our centers, whatever name that you want to give to them. Traditionally, for thousands upon thousands of years, the model that has served is congregations that are centered around order, providing moral clarity, and demanding respect for authority. There's been some shift in this to what some would call modern churches that took that but expanded it to individual prosperity and achievement and success. When I first came to this church, that was its core function. You took 4T classes, you learned how to manifest, how to co-create, how to, bring into the world that's what you wanted to experience. And it absolutely, is within our power to be able to do that. And then there has been this gradual shift, probably over the last 50 years or so, where communities tend to not have that as high a priority as community, as belonging, as relational harmony becoming what is most important to people at that stage. And conflict arises not because any of these perspectives are wrong, and I want you to hear this very carefully too, but because each tends to assume that its worldview is the right one for everybody. It's not that they're wrong, it's just that we have made them wrong. We say, those people that all they do is focus on money, they're just horrible. They're corrupt, they're whatever names we want, and all those woo-woo people who just want to sit around and kumbaya and support each other. They're just, that's just awful. It's both. It's each one of them are a part of who we are in our humanity. And where we're being called right now is to get to that place where we can see the value and we can embrace each one of those aspects of us in a way that honors and values all of it. And it's not easy to do. The increasing complexity of our world is inviting us into what Spiral Dynamics calls a second tier. I'm calling this is the Christ consciousness. We talk about what Christ calls us each to do, but most of us have a pretty hard time living it for any length of time. To live in that place of non-judgment, that place of forgiveness, compassion, kindness, understanding, when in our face is something that we disagree with, call evil, call wrong, call whatever we want to say. And I don't care what side you're on, there's plenty of it for everybody. But as long as we're in that place where, as long as it's either this or that, we will struggle. And eventually, things will collapse until something new can emerge. It is just the place we are in our evolution of our consciousness. So second-tier consciousness moves us beyond either or, that thinking where it's this or that, to both and. I know Kenny's back there going, she's back on the both and again. And sometimes we think, I'll say to somebody, you mean both? No, most definitely, there is no either or in that. There's right and there's wrong, and there's no in between. How many of you ever been in a situation where you felt like with absolute certainty that is wrong and that is right? If you haven't, then you're back in the earlier stages where you haven't awakened to that diversity and complexity of our thinking. It is that's part of our humanity. And one of the deepest paradoxes that we're invited to embrace is that we are both human and divine. Our humanity says it's either or. Our divinity says it's both and. And the truth is we're both. And we're both at the same time. We're both finite and infinite. We are growing, and we are already whole. We're separate, and yet we're profoundly connected. We are wise in some moments and foolish in others. And we are called to embrace it all without making it right or wrong or good or bad. Jesus is probably one of the few that I've ever seen who was able to embody this paradox fully. He wept, he suffered, he questioned, and he prayed as a human being while simultaneously expressing the presence of God within him, speaking from a place where there was no separation, inviting us into knowing both. His life suggests that spiritual maturity is not about escaping our humanity. It's not that somehow we can become spiritual enough that we can let our humanity go, but awakening to the divine presence that is right in the midst of the messiness of our humanity. So as we are being invited to see how we can, in a greater way, embrace the paradox, having these two seemingly opposite things be true at the same time, I'm going to invite you as we move into our meditation to see how we might, in our own interbeingness, both from a human and divine perspective, be able to perhaps see it in a different way. So as you just begin to bring your attention inward, perhaps shutting down your eyes so that you can be fully present to what's unfolding in the interior of your being rather than the awareness of what's happening around you. And I invite you to place your attention in your heart space, that place that is and can be the bridge between our humanity and our divinity. The place where paradox can be embraced, where both seemingly contradictory things can be true. And I invite you to bring into this space a situation, perhaps even a person, where you feel pulled between these two truths, these two perspectives or two possibilities. Just notice the tendency of the mind to choose one side or the other, to decide, to judge what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false. Now, as you breathe deeper into the awareness of your heart, see if you can let go just for these next few moments the need to choose. Breathe in and affirm, I am both human and divine. And breathe out the need to be only one thing. Breathe in the awareness that I am both growing, changing, evolving, and already completely whole. As you breathe out, see if you can't trust the unfolding of both of these in your life. Breathe in your ability to hold both uncertainty and wisdom in the same moment. And as you breathe out, allow yourself to make space for the mystery. Imagine yourself standing in a field of infinite possibility. Before you, you see two paths appear. But if you pause for a minute before feeling the need to make a choice, and just breathe in this moment, notice them slowly converging down the road into a wider path. One capable of holding more than either path alone. Rest in the awareness that God is greater than the limitations of either or thinking. The kingdom is within you, and it's still unfolding. You are complete, and you are becoming. You are enough. And you are becoming enough. You are at peace. And you can struggle. Allow these truths to coexist within you. And know that divine wisdom helps you embrace both and. You can trust the larger truth that holds all things together. Take another deep breath, ready and open and excited for what this day might bring as you now welcome both and all of it. And whenever you're ready, you can begin to bring your attention back to this time and space, and yet carrying with you a heart open to paradox, to possibility, and to wholeness. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. So just as our lives and as our world are being asked to hold greater complexity, so too are our spiritual communities. You know, for decades, churches across all traditions have experienced steady institutional decline. We've talked about this before. Leaders often point to cultural distraction, political polarization, digital spirituality now emerging, changing family structures, the lingering effects of the pandemic. We can look at and assess and point to a lot of different things. And I think while each of these factors do play a role, they also point to something deeper. And that is a shift in the consciousness, in the container itself. For centuries, the church has largely been organized around a minister-centric model. That means that the minister served as the spiritual guide, as the teacher, as the caregiver, as the administrator, as the visionary, as the symbolic parent of the community. The minister was asked to do it all. And this model evolved in a world where it made a lot of sense. At the time it came into being, it was a world where authority was centralized, where information moved slowly, where the average person was not literal or literate, was not able to get information other than through this central source, and that this hierarchy provided stability for the community. But the world that shaped that model is rapidly changing. So today's spiritual communities exist in a landscape marked by people coming in with a certain level of psychological awareness, of trauma-informed practices, with cultural diversity, technology acceleration, and unprecedented complexity that this container is being asked to hold. And the question before us is not how to preserve the old forms, but what kind of container is needed for this consciousness now emerging. That's what we've been working on over these last 5 years, is to create structures that can hold that can hold the ability of all this complexity and diversity, but be able to fulfill its mission, and in this case, of creating that container where lives can be transformed, where the principles, where the practices are offered in such a way that people can make not only a positive difference in their own lives, but in the world. One that distributes leadership rather than concentrates it. One that invites self-responsibility, spiritual maturity, where shadow work becomes integral because that is the model in which we can then become responsible for our own reactions and actions to whatever might be going on. One that learns, and this is the most difficult, but is one of the most critical, I think, how do we sense and respond rather than predict and control? So a predict and control says attendance is declining. What do we need to do? Well, let's try this, let's try, in the past we've been able to do this. Sense and respond says, let's sit with this and let's see what ideas might be showing up that are way beyond the box in which we've experienced to this moment. If this second tier consciousness teaches us anything, is that no single person can carry the wisdom needed for this time. The future belongs to communities that can hold paradox, that can welcome diversity of perspective. That's a really hard one right now, but it's what we're being called to do. And trust that Spirit speaks through the whole as well as through the individual. So the invitation before us is simple, it's profound, to become a community capable of living both and. A community that honors tradition and welcomes innovation. A community of individuality and belonging and humanity and divinity that can contain both of those. A community mature enough to embrace complexity without losing compassion, and courageous enough to evolve while remaining rooted in love. One that gives thanks for the wisdom of the elders and gives equal thanks for the vision of the young as it carries us into our next becoming. All right, well, it is our opportunity now to share with our financial good with our ministry. In just a moment, the ushers are going to invite you to come up row by row if you're able and be in this flow of giving and receiving. You can share whatever gifts you're offering today in the larger basket, or we have new little cards that you can bring that say you give electronically, or you can just add your energy to the basket and then receive an affirmation to bless you this week. It is through this shared responsibility and shared privilege that we get to support this community, and we're grateful for all of the ways in which that unfolds. And we take that gratitude as we hold in our hearts and in our hands all that we offer into this community as we join and bless it together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, Father, Mother God.
And we're going to sing our peace song.
So the men of our community, don't forget to get your picture taken. We got a special gift if you haven't already gotten one, and we're going to go out into this week, into this day, knowing that we are surrounded and enfolded by that one power and that one presence as we affirm this in call and response. The light of God surrounds us.
I am the light of God.
The love of God enfolds us.
I am the love of God.
The power of God protects us.
I am the power of God.
The presence of God watches over us.
I am the presence of God.
Together, wherever we are, God is, and all is well.